Evening guys, Real 111T here. Just going to do a bit of a review or a little bit of a discussion about one of my favorite kind of bashing around the property kind of cutting implements. Um, as I've said, I've really been kind of transitioning to Moras for a lot of my cutting chores when I'm out and about. Um, but this is something that I will throw in the car, and this kind of bridges the gap. I don't generally carry the full-size K-bar fighting knives, but if I need to chop down some brush, um, or just as a general bushcraft tool, a machete is not a bad choice. And this is the one that I picked, and of all my knives, I've had this one a long time. I've had this probably 16 or 17 years. I've had this particular machete, and it's a little bit worse for wear. You see the parkerizing's a little worn off. There's a little bit of surface rust up there. Um, this is in Ontario. It's very similar to the military model. The only difference is this is the sawback version. We're gonna focus on you or what? Oh, it's a sawback version. As a decision I made, like I said, a long time ago. Um, and I have actually used the sawback on a couple occasions. I'm not incredibly crazy about it. There's something a little bit, I think, unsafe about using it. I haven't actually hurt myself with it. It definitely does make the tool a little bit more dangerous because this back end, if you were to get whacked with this back end, it would be you'd make a fearsome kind of a wound with that. Um, so I guess if you're going to use it as a weapon, that might be something to consider. But as a tool, I think if I had it to do over again, I would probably get the plain back version of it. There's also several different versions of these out there. Um, there's another one. It's called the economy line that looks exactly the same. I don't think they make it in the sawback version, but it looks exactly the same as the military version, except it's not. And the only difference between them is the heat treat. Evidently, the military version gets a heat treat, and the economy version doesn't. So that's something to think of. You got exactly the same materials, and yet, you know, some of them are better than others. That's something interesting. I ran into a guy at a barbecue actually, and that's the thing about living where I live is that eventually you're going to run into someone who works at these places in a barbecue. And we got talking, and I happened to have this in the car, and I pulled it out. I was like, "Oh yeah, that's one of the good ones." You know, he could tell from looking at it and what options it had that the sawback ones had that, and he said that the actual ones they sell as the military spec ones have the heat treat. Um, so yeah, so that's interesting. Um, this when I got it, it only came with like a cardboard slip cover, which I think is regrettable. And then I was able to procure one of these issue plastic sheaths. I wouldn't consider. This is an excellent sheath, basically for a machete. You may be able to put something together, leather or whatever, but a lot of the nylon machete sheaths that are on the market are just garbage, in my view. Um, but this does a decent job at protecting both you and the tool, basically. I don't have any problem taking this and throwing it in the back of the car, and that's an important point when you're picking a machete. I can go down to the hardware store and they've got all these Brazilian machetes, Tramontina ones, and I'm sure they're very nice. If you're gonna buy a machete, a lot of times you think, well, Brazil has rainforests, right? So, but the thing is then what do you do for a sheath? They're relatively inexpensive, but there's really isn't any sort of provision at all for a sheath. So you can either just go with a tool without a sheath, which is an option. You just have to be extra careful, you know. Um, but I like the sheath. I've had this as long as I've had the Machete. I got them both at the same time. This one, the military sheets have this like carbide sharpener doohickey here. Mine broke years ago. Um, see, I got a little diamond, cheapo diamond hone on there, which is pretty much what I do now. Um, I'm really not too picky about it. I've used like some quickie like carbide sharpeners and stuff like that on it too. It's really not practical to put this on like a clamp system like a Lansky system. So I've tried a bunch of things over the years. Just a simple stone. I've tried the Lansky puck, lots of different things, and they all tend to work. You want a sharp edge. I don't know how important it is to have a super razor edge on a machete. Essentially, a machete is a tool you're going to be banging into things. I mean, mostly wood. I mean, that's what you're trying to bang it into, but it's definitely a hard use blade, and I don't know how a super thin edge really would be a good option for something like this. So I try and keep it simple, you know, and you can tell when you're using the tool if it's sharp, you can tell. So um, yeah, this is what I've picked, and like I said, I picked it years and years ago, and I heartily recommend it. I picked up a model a couple years ago for my brother-in-law, and just like I said, I got him basically the same thing, the military version without without the sawback, and they had made some changes. This handle on here is like a Bakelite. It's real hard, kind of a plastic material, and his was more of a poly kind of material. Um, he also did have some quality issues. He had a couple rivets pop out on him, and I suggested that he take it back, but I don't think he ever did. Uh, I also noticed some nicks on the blade. I strongly suspect he was sword fighting with it. Oh, what a guy. But, yeah, he just kind of wrapped the handle with some jute and kind of went from there. But, yeah, I'm sure if he had returned it to Ontario, they would have totally taken care of him, and it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Actually, I'm sure that the actual factory is not a very far drive from the family property where he probably damaged it. Probably less than a 15-minute drive in Franklinville. So, yeah, there have definitely been some changes over the years to this model. One thing that I will say is that one of the things a lot of people don't like about the handle is they say that it's too chunky. I've never run into situations where I was getting blisters on my hands. Maybe I just don't use it that hard or that much. I suppose if you used a machete every day, you could be pretty picky about the contour of the handle and everything like that. But like I said, this one's done me fine for years, and hopefully many more years to come. Thanks for watching.